In this next demonstration, we will look at formatting. So I've seen this example before where we have these three characters: grade math, I'll initialize that to A, grade physics, I initialize that to B, and grade English, which I'll initialize to C. Now I am including, so I'm using a namespace standard at the top, and then I have IOStream as well. I'm just using the namespace standard so I don't have to do that all over the place here, but that is just for demonstration purposes here. Okay, so I have these characters, and then I have this console output statement, subject with two tabs, and then grade, and then I have this math here, also with two tabs, and then I do the grade math, so that is going to print out an A, and then physics, and then English as well. Both of those only have one tab. So if we looked at basic formatting like this, if I build a run, we can see that those line up now, the subject column to the left and the grade column to the right. But it's a bit annoying because, for example, if I remove the tab over here and maybe up here with the subject, and if I build a run, then you can see that those are very close to the left here, whereas if we do a tab with the physics and the English, then those are right at the end. And the tab basically represents 8 characters, as I mentioned in previous lectures. You can see that we have 8 characters at the beginning here. With physics and English, for example, we have 8 characters, and then the next character is going to be a tab, which will give us another 8 characters. Whereas for math here, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. Then we do a tab, and so that is going to then be only a few characters. And the same with subject, that is only 7 characters. Then we do a tab, and then that is going to be in the next section. So that is why we need to add multiple tabs to have those things line up the way we want. That is if we don't want them close up, like this for example. But even in this case now we need to do a tab here, and then in that way those will line up like that, right? So we've discussed the sort of formatting that we can do using the escape sequences. We've also discussed the new line character and some of the other escape sequences as well. But in this section I want to discuss a different way of how we can do the formatting, and that is by setting the field width. Now what is the field width? Well, the field width is going to determine the minimum number of characters to be written in some output. If the output, so the number of characters within the output, is shorter, so in other words you have fewer characters than the field width, then the output is going to be padded with fill characters. By default that is white space, so in other words spaces, but we can change that as we'll see in an upcoming demonstration. And by default when we set the field width, it is also going to be right justified, but we can also modify that to be left justified or also internal justified. And we'll see the differences in a demonstration as well. Let's look at how we can set the field width. I'm going to use this line here as an example to get started off with. We have a math, and then we have the tab character. Now, right before that, I will use a member function on the console output called the width, and then maybe I'll set that to something like 8. Then I can remove that tab character over there, and I will build a run, and you can see what happens here. This is going to be right justified by default, and we get a bunch of characters inserted. So the field is 8 characters, but the output is padded with fill characters, in this case white space, or in other words the space character. It's right justified, it ends over here, and then we get the A, which again is output with grade math. Now we can also display a different character, so we can set the fill character. That is using the fill member function on console output. Go and add a tab in here just for interest, and if I build a run, you can see that we have 2 of those fill characters will show up, and math will not be right at the end, and that's because we actually have a tab right at the end. So I have to remember that the tab is also a character. Okay, so I'll actually go back to doing 2 tabs here, like that with our previous formatting. And if I build a run, again basically we want something like this maybe, and you can now see that we have 6 characters in here, one of those being a fill character, and that's because 2 of those are tabs. Again, if I remove those 2, build a run now, you will see what I mean. We now get 8 characters, 3 of those are the fill character. As I mentioned, the justification is going to be left by default, but we can change that. For example, I'm using std left, and to justify, if I build a run now, you can see math is going to be left justified. We get those full characters and then the A. Remember, we are not doing the tab. Again, I'm just gonna remove these. Just playing around here. You can see the full character, then we get the A. Without the full, of course, again, we'll get white space. Then what we can also do is write to justify it to the right. Build a run, and you can see that is now right justified, and as I mentioned, that is the default. Okay, moving on, we have the console output here. We are setting math here to be right justified, and we actually don't have to do that because that is the default. Right, the width for that is now going to be 8. We can actually get the width, can go and print that out. For example, we can do console output.width, and that is going to fetch the current width. Print that out, that is 8. That is what we have it set right here. Just wanted to show you the difference there. Now this is not all that important, I just wanted to show you that you can fetch the current width to see what it is, and then also that you can set it using the width member function of the console output stream. Just remove that because there's actually a different way that you would typically do that, and that is using the setW function. For example, with math here, right before math, we can go and do setW and we pass in 8. Now that will not be recognized currently, the identifier is undefined, and that's because it is defined in a different file called io_manip for input-output manipulation. That is now recognized. Set width, we do that for math, and then we can do that over here as well, maybe for the grade math. And then if I build a run now, you can see we basically get that tab, even though we do not have to do the tab character. Previously we had to do tab with the math, following the math here, as we had to do it in this line, where we had subject, the tab, and then grade, but we don't have to do that here. We can simply set the width of those fields. Can go and remove those tabs now, and the same thing over here. So I'll just go and set the width for all of those to 8, for example, and build a run. Those will basically all line up. This is kind of bad practice here because it's best to have some sort of variable for this. For example, Control C, then I'll do find, and I'll do 8, and I'll switch here, and I will replace that with width, and then I'll replace all. Okay, so that's a quick way of fixing that, and actually I just have to, that replaced that as well, so I want to set that back to 8, and now basically we can change that to whatever width we want, build a run, and you can see that works, and we don't have to use tabs with this. And what we can also do now, we can set the justification to left if you don't want that to be right, and if I build a run now, then you can see those are close up together like this again, and I can quickly go and change that in one place, set that to right, and if I build a run, you can see we basically have those separated out to the right. It really depends on what justification you want. I have another example here so we can see what this looks like with 3 columns. For each one of these printouts down here, I'll do the field width, which is an integer unsigned int. I pass in what width I want for that field, and then I want to go and print out the first name, last name, and then the age as well. So this will be the header, and then we have the actual printout. So we have Avril Lavigne, 37 for example, and so forth for every person. And if I build a run in this case, you will see what we get. it is right justified, and it's easy to read in this way. But if you want, you can justify that to the left as well, as we've seen before. So I'll bold around that, and it is now left justified. As I mentioned in previous sections, we can set the fill character, but in this example I'm using standard set fill, and then I'm going to pass in this. So instead of using a space, I'm going to use this character right here, and if I bold around now, that will fill the empty space now. And you might think, where's this useful? Well, if you process a file, you might want to process and check for these characters, but we'll talk about files and streams in a bit more detail in an upcoming lesson. Instead of using the fill member function in this example on the console output, we are using standard set fill. And of course you can have this on the same line up here, but for readability I'll just split it out like that. And if you find that you have a name that is too long, then you can go and change the field width up here. Build a run and you can see you have more space. And of course you may not need the same field width for the last name as you do for the first name, and the age may also not need such a huge field length. You can set something else for that. Field width for the age, let's say we set that to, let's say 3 characters, and then where we have the age, we can go and specify that. Actually, I'll just go and make that 4 since we have 4 here. Build a run, and you can see what I mean by that. And you can change those field widths in one place. Again, you can do the same thing for the last name or the surname. Right, so that was just another demonstration on using the field widths, and then we've also discussed the fact that you can use the standard set fill to change the fill if you want. Of course, it doesn't have to be this character, it can be something else, like X, whatever you want. Alright. We'll continue discussing string manipulators in the next lecture. We will talk about how we can use these string manipulators along with numbers such as floats, for example, and how we can format those.